Good evening, good day. Welcome to another great speaker in our series of talks. Today we have Dhwani Jain, and hopefully she will join me in a moment as she switches on her camera and microphone. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us from Delhi in India.
Thank you so much.
Dwhani is an amazing woman, dynamic woman who started off as an engineer and is now a social entrepreneur. And she's been switched also during the pandemic to support women who were abused and trying to give them economic power. So she's a multifaceted woman who I think will give us a fascinating talk. Thank you very much. And I will now leave you to talk and come back for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Henry, for the wonderful introduction. And in fact, it is my pleasure and honor to be speaking today in your coveted festival. So I think it's daytime in some parts of the world and evening in some. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And as Henry just told, I'm Dhwani Jain, an engineer by qualification and a social entrepreneur by choice. And I'm running my own non-profit organization, Karma Foundation. I left my corporate career around 10 years back with a hope and dream to contribute towards the welfare of society. And my mission is to build an inclusive and participatory society wherein every individual lives a life of dignity as an empowered and self-reliant entity. I feel this vision is closely linked to the concept of economic pluralism, which is being discussed throughout this festival. Because when I talk about empowering each and every person to enable them to live a life of dignity, it includes social empowerment, it includes cultural empowerment, it also includes educational empowerment, psychological empowerment, political empowerment, as well as economic empowerment. But the important question is, how do we actually empower people? And my answer in one word would be through your karma or actions. And this is exactly what I will be talking about today. That is the power of actions or karma to make a positive change in the world for a better tomorrow. I have always believed in the power of thoughts, words, and actions. And I tell people that our thoughts actually define our words and actions, and our actions have the capability to shape our thoughts. So if we think of making some change, we need to first believe in that. And once we have faith in our vision, only then can we decide the plan of action, and then from there on work in real time to become the agents of change. Do not forget that where there's a will, there's a way. And imagine if Wright brothers had not believed in their dream of inventing a flying machine, we wouldn't have had aeroplanes and there would be no way of fast transport. Of course, some of you would say, if not them, it could be someone else. But my point here is still someone had actually believed in that idea and worked on it with dedication, it would have been impossible. Then this idea may or may not be revolutionary. Even small little steps in the right direction have the capability to bring about a drastic impact. Most of the times, we tend to underestimate the influence of small little things. But remember that every great thing is a result of a series of small things brought together. In fact, small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can actually transform the world. And that is the purpose that we keep on having such programs, such festivals, so that we multiply the impact done by individual people. And I feel this is relevant today more than ever in history. As all of us are aware that the COVID-19 pandemic actually took the world by storm and impacted the life of each one of us in every part of the globe in more than just one way. And we are currently living in what I call a VUCA world. So that is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. This is a world where the speed of change is enormous, future is unpredictable, there are multiple factors which are impacting our lives, and there's no clarity. And in the future also, change only promises to speed up. So to thrive in a world where change is the only constant, we need to replace old thinking with a new framework. And therefore, I believe that there are immense opportunities for the youth, specifically for the youth in today's world, in every sector, starting from agriculture to handicrafts, to education, to technology, and so on. And why do I say so? It is because I believe that young leaders tend to embrace change. They think out of the box, have a lot of ideas, and are result driven. They're ambitious, optimistic, and have the willpower to make a better tomorrow. And as I always say, youth of today are not only the leaders of tomorrow, but they are the partners of today. And therefore, as a young leader, it is your foremost responsibility to not only believe in yourself and your abilities, but also make a promise to yourself to contribute towards building a progressive world through your actions. This way, you would not only become the agents of change yourself, but also inspire millions of others to follow your footsteps. Now, when we talk about the world today, we are facing multiple challenges. It ranges from the present pandemic to the environmental pollution, economic slowdown, terrorism, cyber and space warfare, poverty, inequality, violence, regional and religious conflicts. And the underlying reason for most of these problems is our own insatiable desire to own things. And therefore, to ensure that all human beings live in dignity, we must learn to respect the limits of our planet. And there comes the role of social enterprises to build an inclusive and pluralist society for sustainable economic revival. So, a social enterprise is an organization that applies commercial strategies to maximize improvements in financial, social, and environmental well-being, which may include maximizing social impact alongside profit for co-owners. So this actually turns out to be a win-win situation for all the stakeholders and has an equalizing effect. In fact, I feel that not only social organizations or social enterprises, but all organizations must have the binding responsibility to ensure the protection of human rights as well as the environmental rights. And why do I say so? So let us consider the impact of industries on environment and the approach being followed to preserve and protect the environment. Currently, we are following the polluter pays principle, which undoubtedly has noble intentions, but it often does not lead to desirable outcomes. In fact, India became the first country to legally mandate corporate social responsibility on 1st April 2014, and this act makes it mandatory for companies having a net worth of rupees 500 crore or more, or a turnover of rupees 1000 crore or more, or a net profit of rupees 5 crore or more to spend 2% of their average net profit for the past 3 years on CSR. Now, this definitely is a step forward, but it often falls short of the long-term objective. And therefore, what is required right now is to follow ethical practices in businesses. Let me explain this by giving a real-time example. So you must be acquainted with the Bhopal Gas Tragedy, which was one of the worst industrial disasters of all time. and it occurred in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, India on the night of December 3, 1984. Union Carbide was the third largest US chemical company operating plants in 38 countries. And the accidental release of methyl isocyanate in the congested, low-income district of Old Bhopal killed approximately 3,000 people and also led many thousand more with chronic disabilities, leading to premature deaths. This tragedy raised the question of the ethics of locating a plant capable of such devastation in a highly populated urban site. Now, even if the company later spends 2% of its profit in CSR, the magnitude of disaster is so immense and it cannot be reversed. So, this example gives us an understanding of why considerations of business ethics are so very important and the implications of ignoring their existence. And hence, the importance of social enterprises which have the capability to build partnerships across boundaries that appeal not only to people's mind but also move their hearts. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has testified the fact that our own actions are responsible for the degradation of nature. The fact that we have been ignoring from a long time in pursuit of material possessions. And during the lockdown, all of us witnessed how the nature came back to its glory. So it is more important than ever to re-establish a degree of coexistence with nature to stabilize our economies and our society. And therefore, social enterprises must come to the forefront when we plan the economic revival post-COVID so that it is planned in a sustainable manner. Apart from the perspective of the environment, social enterprises also play a pivotal role in building an equitable society. How do they do this? So a social enterprise ideally would identify a social cause that needs immediate attention in a particular area and then involve the local community, particularly from the weaker segment, youth and women, and then look for innovative ideas to bring about a lasting change. This helps in generating employment for the local population, along with creating a sense of purpose in them. In fact, in my own organization also, I'm working on a couple of projects to produce eco-friendly products, which would not only provide employment to the women in distress, but also help in air purification using all natural raw material. And this is so important in today's world to fill the widening gap between the haves and have-nots by promoting greater participation of disadvantaged groups. Another case in point is the handloom sector. Now, when I talk about India, the handloom sector is one of the richest and most vibrant aspects of the Indian cultural heritage. However, the condition of the weaving community is deplorable, and most of the handloom workers are from economically disadvantaged groups. About 67% of weaving households earn less than rupees 5,000 a month. They are actually living in poverty and keeping up with limited resources. And the COVID pandemic has further worsened the already ailing handloom sector. The livelihood of the weavers have been badly hit, many actually fearing starvation. To give you a brief of the advantages of handloom industry is the second largest income generating activity after agriculture in rural India, and 95% of the international handloom market is fed from India. Handloom production is eco-friendly. It has a small carbon footprint and is easy as well as inexpensive to install and operate. It has the potential to reverse the trend of migration and improve the standard of living of a vast population. In spite of all these benefits, this sector was neglected for the longest time. So there is an urgent need for preserving this craft to ensure the survival of this art form and also the craftsmen associated with this. Again, the social enterprises have to come forward to support this dwindling cottage industry. In fact, at the grassroots level, the self-help groups in India have played an important role in uplifting the people from marginalized sections by providing them access to resources, skills, money, as well as market. And there is an immediate need to further strengthen this system. In fact, the need for inclusion is even more in a country like India, which is famous for its diversity. And while I truly believe that diversity is our strength, as it provides us a more realistic view of the world by taking into account a fuller range of human experience, but it is equally important that we ensure inclusion and participation of diverse groups in our development programs. In fact, recently, the Honorable Prime Minister had given a call for Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is essentially to empower the poor, laborers, migrants, and other disadvantaged groups who have been adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, with a vision to make India a bigger and more important part of the global economy, pursuing policies that are efficient, competitive, and resilient. I think a similar approach may be followed by other nations as well to become important partners in the global economy while planning their own economic revival. And this will certainly help in creating a world order which promotes economic pluralism or diversity along with inclusivity. Now, some people believe that this call for self-reliance implies being close to the world. However, this concept is very different, and in fact, it will be mutually beneficial for each one of us. Let me explain this by giving an example. Now, India is a country with a vast geographical expanse. As a result, the climate in the north is different from that in the south. And the soil type of eastern India is qualitatively different from that of western India. We have diversity in almost everything. So the soil and climatic conditions in Kashmir are suitable for apple cultivation, while in the south, the conditions are apt for cultivation of coconut. Now, self-reliance does not mean that we start growing apples in the south and coconuts in Kashmir. No, not that way. In fact, by promoting self-reliance, we are effectively promoting interdependence. Currently, in the present world order, there is centralization of power and resources. For example, China till recently was the manufacturing hub, and almost everything currently is made in China and distributed across the globe. We realized the shortcoming of this model when the COVID pandemic hit the world, which led to disruption of transportation. As a result, there was shortage of essential commodities in some parts due to breaking of supply chains. So there's a need to decentralize our modes of operation. What is required essentially is that in a globalized world order, economic activities become interlinked and interdependent. And the best practices and latest technologies are transferred from one nation to the other so that there's more parity and development is more uniform at the global level. I'll move on to another very important sector, which is the backbone of an economy and provides the basic ingredients to mankind and raw material for industrialization. That is the agriculture and allied activities. And I feel that there's a lot of scope of improvement and innovation in the field of agriculture that will lead to significant improvements in our food and nutritional security, including greater investment in science and technology. Beyond improved seeds and crop protection tools, Other technologies enable farmers to increase their productivity, such as modern irrigation practices, crop management products, mobile technology, fertilizer and mechanization management, etc. I'll give you an example from India. Around 4-5 years back, the soil health card scheme was implemented by the government of India, and soil cards were issued to farmers which carry crop-wise recommendations of nutrients and fertilizers required for individual farms, with the aim of increasing productivity through judicious use of inputs. In fact, this concept of pluralism is valid in the agriculture sector as well. Many times we have noticed that the farmers grow the same crop in their land year after year, and this leads to depletion of essential nutrients in the soil. As a result, the productivity of the land decreases, and a very simple practice of crop rotation can ensure that soil nutrients are sustained, pest population is controlled, weeds are suppressed, and soil health is built. This example testifies how relatively simple actions can lead to sustainable solutions.
Dwhani,
Now, when we talk about building our economies post-pandemic, we must also remember some of the important teachings that the coronavirus has taught us. And as we fight the common invisible enemy, we have realized that the virus doesn't differentiate on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, race, religion, caste, or gender. And therefore, we humans must also rise above these differences and stand for each other, irrespective of the socio-economic status, religious dogmas, political ideologies, or any other form of discrimination.
Dwhani?
I feel that this is a moment that demands coordinated, decisive, and an innovative policy action at the collective level, and a strong character and resilience at the individual level. This is definitely a testing time for all of us. But we must not get disappointed, nor shall we lose hope. The true character of an individual is revealed only in tough situations, and every challenge makes us a stronger and a better person. So let us take this challenge as an opportunity to show our resilience and strength. The coronavirus outbreak impelled us to follow the basics of life, like embracing humanity and showcasing positivity. We humans must not forget these basic principles once the pandemic is over and we are back to our normal lifestyles. So let us resolve to live in harmony with each other as well as with every living being and the nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dwhani. I was keen we're going to have time for people to ask questions. I'm sure people will have a lot to ask you about. So yeah, I was going to ask you a question to get things started. I was asking you why you'd switched from being an engineer. What had triggered your decision to stop being an engineer and be a social entrepreneur?
Oh, that's a very interesting question from my life. So yes, I finished my engineering and I was working with a corporate. I worked for almost a year and a half.
What corporate, what are we talking about?
I was working with a European organization called Imperium Business Solutions, and it was a software company, and I was primarily into development.
So software, did a lot of your contemporaries go into software development from university, presumably?
Yes.
And you're working developing software. So what happened then?
Somehow I felt that I was not doing much. I mean, it was a very, it was a kind of environment that anybody would want to be in. It was a very convenient office. Everything was hanky-panky, but I think I'm not the kind of person who can sit in a aircon office and just that doesn't give me happiness. And what gives me happiness is when I give back to the society, when I feel that I made a change in somebody's life. So that was the trigger point. And I was, like I said, I was working from 9 to 6. There was no time left. After coming back home, you get back to your normal life. It was kind of very mundane for me. And that is when I decided, and while traveling, I saw many times that people were suffering.
So you went traveling around India?
Yes, while traveling around in India, abroad, I had realized that people were really suffering. And I do not believe in giving freebies at all. So once at a time, you can provide some kind of financial help, but that does not change the life of a person. So I thought, why not do something for the people who are facing some kind of challenges in their life without any fault of theirs.
So you left your job, your cushy job, your nice job as a IT, which you'd worked very hard, presumably at university to get to, and you
Absolutely.
left it and went traveling. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. And I think I always wanted to become an engineer. I never had the question that what should I do in life? Since the childhood, I knew that I have to become an engineer.
Why was that?
I don't know. I was always very interested in maths and physics. Numbers interested me. So I was always like, okay, fine, I'll become an engineer. But yes, suddenly things changed when I was working in the corporate, and I was thinking that, oh, I'm working for somebody and somebody else is making profit. Okay, I'm also earning, but I was not making any difference in society.
So so while you were doing all the maths and the physics and wanting to become an engineer, how did you think that would make a positive difference in society?
See, I think my engineering background definitely helped me, because apart from those numbers, what we learn in engineering is a very rational approach to life. And that has helped me a lot, that development of analytical thinking. So that has helped me, and I think that was to get into social entrepreneurship was a later decision. Definitely it was. I have never thought of getting into this when I was a child.
And how, I can imagine, well, I've never traveled I've never been to India, so I guess I've seen pictures, I've seen films, etc.
So you must come and visit India.
Well, I really hope to one day, but I could imagine traveling around India and seeing all the challenges people have could be a bit overwhelming, and you might think, well, where do you start?
I think the most important thing is education, because once you get the power of education, you start understanding that yes, these are my rights. See, the government is doing a lot of things for the people, but what I observed is people did not know their basic rights. So education is the first step for sure. And once you're educated, then economic empowerment, definitely, because the Maslow's hierarchy, until and unless your physiological needs are met, you cannot think of higher needs. Yeah. So once you're educated, you need to start earning for yourself to feed yourself. And like we say in India, roti, kapda and makan, that is, you need to have a shelter, you need to have bread, and you need to have clothes. And then you think of something else.
Yeah. But I was very interested when you said, I thought the most important thing was education. I mean, normally when people say that, they say, well, learning to read and write and so forth. But you said education in rights. So, so why did you think that was? But presumably, did they have to learn? People have to learn to read and write before they could know their rights? Or
that's a very interesting question. And in fact, I think learning to read and write would never serve the purpose. It would never serve the purpose. In fact, I know a lot of people who are like professors, who have done their doctorates, who are senior officials, but I would not consider them educated. Now I'll tell you the difference. You may be very educated, but if you spill around, if you throw garbage on the streets, that is not being educated. You may be knowing how to write, you may be a very literate person, but education, through education, you imbibe the basic values. You learn humanity. So when I talk about education, definitely the 3 R's are included, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but that in an isolated way does not help the society to grow.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Dwhani. That's great. We got a question here.
Yeah.
Quite a big question. What are the habits, customs, and institutions which are going to bring together the sort of cooperation you are calling for?
Oh, that's interesting. I think we would need to have cooperation across all the sectors. It has to be government to government, it has to be people to people, and it has to be business to business as well. And I have already spoken about the importance of social enterprises in developing that kind of cooperation. The reason is, when we are completely talking about commercial business, we are only talking about the profit motive. And when we are talking about a social enterprise, we also look at the other angles. Profit, there's nothing wrong in earning profit. I seriously think each one of us deserve to earn profit, because we are putting in our efforts, we are putting in our time, we need to earn from that. But thinking only about profit would not work. So when we talk about cooperation, it has to be a cooperation where we think of mutual benefits. It should not be like you and I are talking and I'm only talking about my things. I want this from Henry, I want that from Henry. No, it has to be, okay, Henry, I'll give you this, tell me what you can offer me. So that is the kind of cooperation that is required at the international level. And a lot of other problems would also be sorted in that way. You know how many countries are having problems across the world with each other. So if we start thinking about not only us, but like not in the terms of me, but us, that will be the solution.
But just to follow up on that, I suppose if we look at the world at the moment,
yeah,
it's dominated by corporations that are driven by profit. So how, and number of social entrepreneurs, social businesses, etc., is relatively small, isn't it? How can we move from a world dominated by corporations to a world where broader values of cooperation and thinking about other people's needs, etc., come to the fore?
I think the most important role has to be played by the governments and also the bigger organizations like UN and like those organizations. Definitely it will take time, because as you said, the world is right now dominated by corporates, but we need to understand that that is the reason we are facing all these challenges. If the world was not dominated by corporates, we would not have had ecological degradation. There would have been no problem of climate change. So once we start realizing the problems associated with this profit motive, with this capitalistic system, I'm not against capitalism as such, but yes, we need to understand the drawbacks, and then we need to have a multi-government approach. The governments from all different countries, we are working on, like, you know, the Paris Convention and all these conventions. We are talking on those terms, but the implementation, I feel, is still low. And again, the implementation is low because we are again thinking in the terms of, oh, this will benefit my country. We have to, like, now I'll tell you, in India, we believe in the ideology of Vasudev Kutumbakam. That is, the world is one family. So we need to imbibe that philosophy.
Brilliant.
That is exactly what I said. It is not about me and you. It is about us.
Absolutely. So we've got a different sort of question here from Parmjit. She's wondering, where do you get support from? What support are you getting and from where?
Oh, that's a tricky question. And I think most of the social enterprises and NGOs, non-profit organizations are always looking for support. So I think I do not have a very structured support as of now from the government, but we do have a group of friends and patrons who are supporting us in our endeavors. And like I said, I'm planning to come up with a couple of products in the market which would be handmade, which would be eco-friendly, environmental friendly, and we would try to get some returns from them and sustain our work.
So, and the people supporting you are sort of philanthropists, are they, as well as friends who are sort of volunteers?
Yes.
It's interesting. Have you read about the critique of the dominance of philanthropists?
I'm sorry, I haven't. If you could give
Well,
me
it's quite interesting because normally social entrepreneurs like yourself, NGOs and so forth, are very don't want to critique philanthropists because they're the source of the money. But the fundamental question is, why do they have so much money and so much power to determine social outcomes?
Exactly. I have spoken about it during my speech. Like I said, in India, we have this CSR Act, which mandates the companies to give 2% of their net profit on some social activity. But like I said, that doesn't solve the problem. Because what is happening right now is, first, we are exploiting human resource, we are exploiting the climate, we are exploiting the nature, and then we give mere 2% back to the society. That doesn't make sense to me. So what we need right now is to inculcate the habit of ethics in business. So once we have ethical practices in business, that can I think that will be actually a way forward. And that is why I'm talking about social enterprises. There's a small difference between a NGO, a non-profit organization, and a social enterprise. So I'm not talking about giving freebies. What we need to do is we need to empower people so that they can earn for themselves while not being very exploitative of the nature.
Great. So any other questions? We can also, Dwhani, presumably you can stick around for a bit and meet some of the people who have come here on the tables. So I can't see any other questions. I think we've had a fascinating presentation and a great discussion. So I'll just thank Dwhani very much for joining us this evening. And then for the moment, and people can then discuss at the tables. Our next speaker is in about 40 minutes. So people can get a drink or stay and chat. The next speaker is Joe Gwinan, who is going to talk about hope and change in the face of crisis and collapse. Joe has been a political economist, political economy thinker, and system change activist, looking at the local level in the UK and the US. And I'm sure he will have a fascinating talk. So I hope everyone will stay with us for that as well. And maybe, Dwhani, you'll be interested too.
Yes, I would be.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Henry, for having me here.
Pleasure.